afternoon, everyone. I'm Christy Wyatt. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Communications here at Alamo Colleges, and I'd like to welcome you to another Alamo Together Summit. So exciting to see all of you here to talk about one of our most groundbreaking innovations at the Alamo Colleges in the past few years. It's AlamoBOOKS Plus, a game changer for our students, allowing them to have their books on the first day of class and eliminating some of the burden and the debt that comes with purchasing or renting books. So today we have a host of folks who have all kinds of experience in standing up this program, executing it, and helping us to make it more sustainable. So we'll talk about that, how we can move past using federal funds to making it a sustainable program that we can afford and make sure is affordable to our students. And joining us to talk about that today is our own Chancellor, Dr. Mike Flores. We'll also have our Vice Chancellor for Academic Success, Dr. George Raley. Also joining us is Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Partnership and Initiatives, Ms. Ruth Dalrymple, and Dr. Laura Boyer, Vice President for Academic Success at Northeast Lakeview College. Along with them, we also have St. Philip's College Associate Professor, Krista Mitchell, and one of our students, Jan Lee Ayala Vasquez, is also going to talk about her experience with academic resources and the AlamoBOOKS Plus program. Now, at the end of the summit, Dr. Flores, Dr. Raley, Ruth, and Dr. Boyer will all be on a panel to answer your questions. If you have them, you can use the Q&A function. It's at the bottom of your screen. Just look for that little Q&A button. You can put in your questions at any time. I'll try to get to as many as we can. And if we don't get to them all, we'll try to get them answered as well. I also want to remind you that you have received some materials about Books Plus and about our budget. So if you want to check your email, look for those DST notices. There's also information about that to help you as we prepare for our students and this upcoming semester with AlamoBOOKS Plus. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our Chancellor, Dr. Mike Flores.
All right, thank you, Christy. Hi, everyone. It's good to once again get together virtually or in person, but to be able to connect. We have close to 125 folks connected with us and hope that more folks will join us as we go through the discussion. I think one of the most important things is talking about where we are on our journey to provide universal access to educational materials. And we wanted to give you an update on how we're sustaining this effort, in particular in providing a roadmap for our students. If you'll remember, when we rolled out AlamoBOOKS Plus, for us, it was a first of its kind initiative for our students, and in fact, it still is. It's an initiative where all of us at the Alamo Colleges are willing to invest in and create benefits for our students and ensure that they are prepared and engaged. We all know from the stories that our students tell us, or perhaps even from our own lived experiences, that attending college is one of the largest expenses that someone will have in their lifetime. And for many of our students, it definitely is. And AlamoBOOKS Plus is just one of the many ways that we are committed to providing accessible and affordable education to all of our students. In fact, AlamoBOOKS Plus ensures that all of our students will have their textbooks and instructional materials by the first day of class. It also ensures that everyone at Alamo Colleges has the same chance to succeed regardless of their socioeconomic background. I'll say that again, that everyone at the Alamo Colleges has the same chance to succeed regardless of their socioeconomic background. Now, Dr. Raley and Ruth Dalrymple and Dr. Boyer are going to dig into why this initiative in particular is a critical part of supporting student success across our 5 colleges. But I wanted to spend some time in talking about a few proof points related to a recent study. It's called Equitable Access, a participant versus non-participant course completion analysis from 2-year institutions. And this study in particular reinforces how programs like AlamoBOOKS Plus can make a measurable impact on student outcomes across community colleges. This study showed increases in course completion rates as a result of a universal access initiative within several demographic groups. It included a 21% increase in course completion rates for African-American students, a 17% increase for Pell Grant recipients, and a 15.5% increase for Hispanic or Latino students when comparing participant and non-participant populations. Alamo Books Plus, for all of us, we believe will create the same student success outcomes, not only overall, but most importantly for each and every student, eliminating the challenges, most importantly, the stresses that they have when they don't have their instructional materials. Now let's think about what that means. Access. Students will have all of their materials before the first day of class. Convenience, they can go and pick it up at your bookstore, or they could simply have it sent to their residence, just like we get many other pieces or packages, simplified and highly personalized. Affordable. Students will save on average about $170 per course. Each course, multiply that by about 7 hours on average that our students are taking this particular term. Now, I'm going to turn it back to Christy and the Alamo Books Plus team to tell you more about this journey, and in particular, how we're providing universal access to instructional materials for each and every one of our 65,000 students this semester.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. And it's
Thanks,
really
Christy.
interesting that data that you shared with us. We know that students don't have an equal playing field. And we often hear about high school and elementary school students where they're in underserved communities and everyone doesn't have a book. And so certainly we want to change that experience and ensure that all of our students have equal access and equal opportunity for success. So really excited to hear more about this. And I know Dr. Raley has been deep into this work, and his team has been working really hard to ensure that all of the proof points that we're sharing today become a reality. And so I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Raley to give a little bit more insight on the work his team is doing and share just a little bit about what they're doing to make this more sustainable and so that we can continue it into the future.
I'd like to thank everyone this afternoon for joining us for this event. This is the single largest student success initiative undertaking ever taken on by the Alamo Colleges. This is an initiative that is over $16 million for the Alamo Colleges. We served some in the most recent semester. Over 48,000 of our Alamo students received benefit from this program. Many thanks go to our faculty, our student government partners, and our students. And Ruth will tell you and Dr. Boyer about our journey that brought us to this initiative. And we're certainly very appreciative of the commitment, the teamwork, and the support of the college presidents, the campuses, our VCAS team, Christy's team. This was truly a family, a system-wide effort to stand this up. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ruth Dalrymple, Vice Chancellor for Academic Success, and also Dr. Boyer, Vice President of Academic Success at Northeast Lakeview. So thank you, Dr. Boyer, for chipping in and support us in this effort. So Ruth, take it away.
All righty. Thank you, Dr. Raley. Good afternoon, everyone. To echo the remarks made by Chancellor Flores, by Christy Wyatt, and by Dr. Raley, universal access to instructional materials has been a vision of our Board of Trustees for many years, and they have laid the foundation in the policy making around course material accessibility and affordability for our students, as well as incorporating this vision into the Chancellor's charges. Next slide. So too often we have seen the news regarding the sticker shock of textbooks. And we also know extensively the struggle our students have had with ensuring that they have access to the instructional materials necessary to help them succeed in their courses. And we also know that students would often go without buying their textbooks due to the rising costs. Next slide. Now, Alamo Books Plus was launched in spring of 2022 to much fanfare. And this is where, with the Board of Trustees approval, the Alamo Colleges District provided instructional materials directly to our students in the form of no-cost textbook rentals for spring, summer, and fall of 2022. So thanks to the board's approval and launch of AlamoBOOKS Plus, this has saved our students a tremendous sum of money. Next slide. So how did we get here? We're happy to share our journey towards universal access to instructional materials from our exploratory phase to our full implementation phase, where our proof of concept went to scale. We began our journey around 2014 with dedicated faculty using open education resources at Palo Alto College, and in 2015 began our work with inclusive access, also known as I Am Direct, at San Antonio College and St. Philip's College. Now, inclusive access, as a reminder, is where extensively lowered textbook prices were negotiated with publishers, and then those costs were tied into student fees as part of their tuition bill. We then began testing phase to ensure that we could move this to scale. Now, also recall that from our strategic planning retreat, when the chancellor came on board, Chancellor Flores came on board, a big idea was formed, and from that, an advisory team was created, focusing specifically on universal access to instructional materials for all students. We want to recognize the work of that advisory team, which consisted of many faculty, librarians, and staff, and it was their hard work that laid the foundation and made it possible to move this to scale. And then finally, with the board's approval and with the infusion of federal HERF funds, the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, AlamoBOOKS Plus was launched in the spring of 2022. Next slide. So when we say AlamoBOOKS Plus, one may ask, well, what is AlamoBOOKS Plus? Well, AlamoBOOKS Plus is universal access to instructional materials at scale. AlamoBOOKS Plus incorporates instructional materials, text and digital forms, as well as open educational resources, or OERs. And Alamo Colleges has been able to harness the knowledge gained in negotiating reduced prices with publishers to leverage an even lower cost model of course materials for our students. For the future sustainability of AlamoBOOKS Plus, one strategy involves increasing the number of class sections that use OER. This may allow us the opportunity to further reduce the cost per semester credit hour that Alamo is billed by Barnes & Noble College. What you see here is just a snapshot of instructional materials offered by semester credit hour for spring and for fall 2022. It consists of OER semester credit hours and those that use digital and hard copy textbooks. There's an opportunity here to continue with the growth in the OER space. Next slide. Our journey of universal access to instructional materials continues to evolve. As we have gone to scale with the launch of AlamoBOOKS Plus, we are in the process of examining the sustainability of such a large-scale student success innovation, which is now in phase 4 of our journey. The Board of Trustees in July approved enhancements to AlamoBOOKS Plus by creating a dual investment and partnership with our students, and which would make AlamoBOOKS Plus a reality for future semesters. The board approved a $15.2 million investment, along with introducing a student instructional materials fee, which would begin in spring of 2023. So to continue with this presentation, I'd like to turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Laura Boyer, Vice President for Academic Success at Northeast Lakeview College. So Dr. Boyer, next slide.
Thank you. This strategy, or this game-changing economic of scale for our students, Alamo Books Plus, is going to be one of the most impactful student success strategies we can have. The reason for this is that our faculty utilize their expertise to create learning experiences that they believe will demonstrate and create the learning for their students that they need. And they have the instructional materials are an essential element of that learning experience. And our faculty care deeply about our students, and they know when they don't have access to those materials at the beginning of the course, it can significantly impact the student's ability to engage in their learning. So Alamo Books Plus will ensure that students have that access from day one. It will allow them to save time and save a significant amount of financial resources in accessing those materials for their class. And this will result in better chances of success and engagement for those students, which ultimately results in higher retention and completion rates for all of our 5 colleges. Next slide, please. So what are the potential savings of Alamo Books Plus for our students? We know that the average cost for textbooks and instructional materials for a course can be $200 as an estimate. For Alamo Books Plus, for the spring 23 and summer 23 semester, the cost for the students will be $5 per credit hour, or $15 for a 3 credit hour course. Starting in fall 23, it will be $10 per credit hour, which means a 3 credit hour course will be $30 for their instructional materials. So if you take the scale of that, 2 courses per semester for our students, that will mean the cost of their textbooks will be reduced by $170 per course. And if you multiply that by the 48,000 students we have each semester, that is a potential saving of $16.5 million per semester for our students. Next slide. As was mentioned previously, we are also continuing our commitment to the development and increase of open educational resources for our courses. And this is another strategy that can potentially continue to reduce the cost of instructional materials for our students. This strategy has been informed by many of our community partners and expertise across the nation with open educational resources. We are committing to and have committed to the creation of professional development activities for faculty that are new to utilizing OER resources, as well as advanced training for our experts that we have now in utilizing and developing open educational resources. Additionally, we are financially investing in faculty so that they can have the ability and time to curate and select open educational resources that best fit the learning they want for their courses. And that can be anything from adapting existing resources to creating and curating new open educational resources for our students. Next slide. Thank you. And I think we'll go to our next presenter.
And I want to thank everyone who was involved in ensuring that we have this really robust program. It took really folks from across the colleges, as was mentioned. Those people whose names are on there were very instrumental, but certainly I want to thank everyone who was involved in this. I know that we had student committees. We also had faculty who weighed in. We had staff and our administrators. So it took really everyone to make this possible. Now I would like to, first of all, thank Dr. Boyer and thank Ruth for this excellent presentation explaining and breaking down the benefits of this program. But I also want to hear from our faculty. They are on the front lines with our students, ensuring that they succeed. And so we talked to a couple of faculty members, some of them who weren't able to be here today because they had class obligations or others, but we want to share with you their experience and their thoughts on Books Plus. So I will now introduce Krista Mitchell, Associate Professor and Program Director for Respiratory Care Technology at St. Philip's College. and Lisa Trevino Coronado, Assistant Professor of English at Palo Alto College.
The respiratory care technology program students benefit greatly from the Alamo Books Plus program in a variety of ways. One being that they are able to save an immense amount semester over semester with the books being provided, as well as programmatically, the two-year program does reutilize the same resources. Therefore, the students will need to make purchases at the end of the semester, and there's an additional discounted rate for that purchase, which makes it incredibly financially sound to allow them to make that decision. Lastly, their books are ready day one. They can hit the ground running. They feel confident and ready to go because they have their materials when they need it, when they're energized. And the faculty's happy because they have a large amount of information, very vital information that needs to be delivered in a short period of time. And to utilize every ounce of that information is definitely worthwhile. And we love the Alamo Books Plus program. Thank you.
Alamo Books Plus has helped my students be prepared on the first day. Currently, I'm teaching online, and for online students, scheduling when to complete their assignments is important, as they are also juggling outside priorities like work or family. By having a system in place that provides the resources my students need to be ready to go on day one, their chances of success increase and their anxiety about materials decreases. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. As with any new system, there are hiccups and bugs to work out, but Ruth and her team have made themselves available to answer questions and receive feedback and suggestions. Our hope is that with time, the system of Alamo Books Plus will be seamlessly integrated into our course preparations, and the question, will our students have their books on the first day, is eliminated. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those testimonials, Ms. Mitchell and Ms. Coronado. Now I want to hear from one of our students. One of our students, Jan Lee, reached out to us to share her experience and thoughts on Alamo Books Plus, and so we'll hear from her now.
My name is Jan Lee. I go to Northwest Vista College, and I'm a psychology major. So I'm a Pell Grant student, so I had to wait until my reimbursement came in from financial aid. So sometimes I would start school, and my first week of school, I wouldn't have my books. So with Alamo Books Plus, I still have my books the first day. I don't have to worry about paying the books since they're physical paper. They're a little more expensive. I would spend around $200 in renting the book. So I didn't have to worry about waiting for the books to arrive, waiting for that refund to kick in, so I can start ordering them, and I can be a successful student just starting up at the front the first day. I think it's great. It's if you compare it to like what you have to pay outside of school and then what you're getting just towards your account, it's a little tiny, with like, it's not even like 1% of what you're getting, you're paying for it. So it won't hurt. It's definitely way more accessible to us and way more flexible when it comes to have access to it too. So I think it's gonna help a lot of students when it comes to worrying about how to find it, where to find it, and if you find it at all. You know, like one of the values that community college has is like student first, and everything that they're doing is towards that. So even though it's gonna like be a little thing, and it's just like I mentioned before, it's gonna be like less than 1% that we're getting like paying for those books. It's amazing that we can get together and make everything affordable to the students. Because students, some of them they're single parents, some of them they're just students helping their parents. So taking that pressure from their shoulders, because now they can go to school and just not worry about that. Like they have to pay an extra in like apart from their account. I think it's great. I'm really excited for this. This is for helping us. This is to make us successful. So if you can just take advantage of this, this is for you.
And thank you very much for that testimony. Certainly, we echo that. We don't want our students to have any worries or barriers to completing their education. So now we are going to open it for questions. We'll have a Q&A session. So I invite back Dr. Raley, Ms. Dalrymple, Dr. Flores to answer some of the questions that we have coming in. So one of the first questions that I have is related to how students will see this on the bill. So is this absorbed into their tuition, or is it a separate fee? How does this show up for the student?
Yes, it is separate from tuition, and it will be identified as a fee, and it's a student instructional materials fee. That's how they will see that on their bill. So it's outside of tuition. It is not a tuition element. It is a student fee.
Okay, and Ms. Dalrymple, for students who have specific waivers, and this may be, I know it's not your area, you are not a billing person, but I'm going to put this out there, and maybe we can get an answer from other individuals, but for students who, for instance, are former foster youth, how will they have to pay? Will it cover the expense? Will things like Pell cover the expense of these fees?
So my understanding is that Pell will cover that. And with respect to a waiver for particular students, we will have to check into that to see if that requires something different. But my assumption is that it should cover anything that has to do with fees as it would have in the past.
Okay, great. And I know there are lots of in-depth questions, and so we will be working together with Academic Success to put some FAQs together to ensure that we can answer all the questions that you have and that our students have. The next question is about our high school students and high school programs. How does this impact them? Is this separate for just students who are enrolled through regular courses, or do dual credit and high school program students benefit from this?
So we have a mix of our high school program students. Some of the costs for the textbooks are embedded within an MOU in partnership with the ISDs that we have. And some of our students are embedded with our classes face-to-face together with our college level courses. And then we have some homeschool students that will be billed similar to this fee that's put into place. But there are different types of students in the high school program arena, and they each have their own model, and that will be laid out in various communiques so that all students will know where they fit, in particular with high school programs.
Okay, thank you. Now, I know this question has come up a lot. It's coming up in my office. For students who are using OER, or a course where there's no traditional textbook and they haven't had to pay a fee, are they going to be required to pay the fee? I know this may be similar to like campus access fees, where maybe you don't use all the campuses, but it's a fee that's applied to everyone. Is this similar?
Yeah, I think one of the things is looking at what we discussed early on is we want to be able to ensure that each and every student has access to instructional materials on day one. So in the spring, it's a $5 per credit hour fee. And then in August of next year will be $10 per credit hour. It's what we call a compulsory fee. So each student would have to pay it in their course. Now, one of the things that was mentioned early on is with regard to OER. And I know some of the platforms in OER may have some conditions. And so that is what we need to examine. And so I did see one of the questions that came in. And so Sean, for instance, with OpenStax and others, we need to have legal look at those in particular. We want to ensure that we are, of course, aligned with the expectations and that you all are able to utilize the OER resources that you have utilized in the past. So we're going to work our way through that in particular, and we're hoping that we can have a response soon, right? But I think overall, and looking at the student testimonials and I think faculty testimonials, we want to be able to ensure students have it, regardless of their economic circumstance, that they have their instructional materials on day one. And I think that's one of the most critical parts. And maybe that's something that we're just so used to doing at Alamo that we don't take a step back and think about just those conversations or challenges that a lot of our students have about making ends meet. And whether or not they're able to provide for themselves or their family members, as a young lady mentioned, and that this relieves a burden. We want to do it as best we can, and we want to ensure that our students, and most importantly also faculty, have access to those instructional materials. So it is a compulsory fee, and we want to work through some of the subtleties related to the OER platform conditions.
So I know one of the questions that came into my office early on when we started to promote this event was a student question about obtaining their resources. So there are students who need those books, they want them. I know we're offering rental and you have to give the book back at the end of the semester, but are there options for students to purchase the book so that they have it for future use? And are those discounted?
Yes, absolutely. We have two options for our students if they wish to purchase, quote unquote, purchase those materials and have them on hand. We know there are many programs where students may utilize some of these resources in their future jobs. So some of these materials are very valuable to those students. So one option is that Barnes & Noble will provide students with a lower cost, up to half price of the cost of the instructional material. The second option is that we are in partnership with, I believe, UPS on site, and our students have the option to get those materials printed out at a low cost.
Okay, thank you for that. And one of the beautiful things about these summits is people get to ask really specific questions about things that they're dealing with. So I have a question out there. I don't know that we have the answer right now, but I just want to put it out there for us to research and take a look at. But it's from Yvette Sterling, who says that she has students in the VN program, and the program is a year, and students see the books for the whole year, but they have to return them at the end of the semester. So is there someone that she can reach out to be able to connect so that the students have the opportunity to keep that book for the entire course of the program?
So certainly I've seen some of the questions of who would be the contact person. We are in the midst of trying to recruit a director of universal access for instructional materials who will take on all of these types of activities and questions and concern. But in the meantime, in the absence of that hire, I will be the contact. I work with Barnes & Noble directly and try to see if we can work out any kinks that are in the system. And we have a team. It's not just me. We have a broad cross college, cross district team consisting of members from finance, from academic success, from high school programs, from the vice presidents of academic success at all the colleges. All these individuals are trying to work together to ensure that we have a process, a program for our students that will continue, so they will continue to have access to the materials at the very low cost as much as possible. There are many questions that are coming up, but for now, we know that each program at the colleges have their own questions. I'm happy to address them one-on-one and happy to come to your department meetings to share any concerns and questions you may have about this.
Okay, and then the question about OER. So I know we're continuing to encourage OER. It's one of the things that makes this program sustainable, that we're not paying for every single textbook, and so everyone shares in the benefit. But are we still labeling courses as OER in the course catalog for spring and beyond?
Yes, we are providing that as an attribute so we can keep track of our OER offerings across the system. Our desire is to increase the OER offerings. We have a dedicated pool of faculty members who have been involved in this OER work for years, and they are passionate about this work and are working towards increasing this and to ensure in the future that there is absolutely no costs, that these are free materials. So we have work to do in terms of trying to determine how we can grow that OER across the district. Secondly, how that will impact our dollars that we send to Barnes and Noble. We're hoping that we can reduce that cost. And we want to ensure that faculty have the training to build OER. And we're trying to build some infrastructure so that it's not so, for lack of a better word, scary for faculty to dive into the OER world. But we know that Alamo Books Plus has been very popular with our faculty, and it kind of has been cutting into OER growth, but we are looking at ways of how we can increase that growth in OER, in the OER space. We have seen faculty order several books within Alamo Books Plus in their classes. So really, how can we create more OER options for some of those courses that have multiple textbooks in them? That will be something that we will need to address as we go forward.
Okay, and I have a follow-up question, and this is a very good one because I think I was really enlightened when I dived into this topic, but now that we have Books Plus, it's free for students. Should faculty just go out and pick whatever book that they like, or are we still encouraging OER? So there's no cost, right? So can I get a more expensive textbook or multiple textbooks? Tell me about how that works and how we keep it sustainable.
So yes, the whole crux of this is the sustainability aspect. You know, we don't want our faculty to go wild like they're kids in a candy store, but we also know faculty need tools to conduct their classroom. Faculty are in charge of curriculum, and they're also in charge of selecting their instructional materials. Faculty have been over the years, very concerned with the high cost of materials, and have also looked for lower cost materials along the way. But now they're seeing opportunities to utilize some of the latest advancements in instructional materials, and they're giving it a try. But we also know the landscape of publishing and textbooks is constantly changing now with all of these various different models that are coming up. But we also know that will be advantageous to faculty because it will start to lower costs of materials and books and any other instructional materials that students may need. So we expect more volatility in this world, but I hope that it will be more advantageous to our students.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think as Ruth mentioned, right, the most important thing to do is to do what you've done before, is to carefully select either for yourself or in collaboration with colleagues for that course or within your discipline, the instructional materials that you believe are most important in engaging with your students and engaging them in the curriculum. I think the other is then approaching it from that vantage point, as you've always done, is then knowing that students are going to have access, and that all of your class, right, that all of your students within each section are going to have access to the instructional materials. So there won't be as many questions about, is this on reserve at the library, or the conversations before or after class in which, or they're leaning over during class asking if they can borrow the book and make copies or take pictures. All of those things which are a little unsettling in the conversations because, that means they don't have money to buy the book. So I think that this, all in all, is one of the most ambitious things that we've done. It really, from an equity lens, provides all of our students with access to instructional materials. And it also ensures that we continue to move forward in the ways in which faculty have selected instructional materials that meet the needs of their course.
So we have one final question as we wrap up, and I know that we did extensive research with other organizations, institutions. Were there lessons that we learned from that, and how do we put those into practice to make this an even better program? And then hopefully we can have a follow-up Alamo Together Summit to look at our own best practices as we complete another iteration of this program. So Dr. Bailey, any thoughts on that?
Yes, we've looked at many programs across the country. What we're doing is not new. It's new for Alamo, but other institutions have done put together similar programs. Certainly, it's important that you have the voices of the faculty involved. That's why we asked them to join us in this effort, and we do have a instructional materials OER committee that has been meeting for well over almost 2 years now. And certainly many thanks to those committed faculty who have given up their time on a Monday evening when they could be doing something else to spend 2 hours to talk about how we can provide low-cost instructional materials for our students. Secondly, we surveyed our students. We had student conversations with our student government. We surveyed our students. We had 4,400 students respond to one of our surveys. They told us that books were a major expense for them and a struggle. They also said that if they couldn't afford the book, they would either take the class and not have a book, or they would not enroll in the class at all. And they also said that they recognized that if they did not have their instructional materials, they knew that it impacted their academic success. And so that was really powerful information for us, directly from our students, telling us that they really needed a low-cost instructional material support for them to ensure that they would take their classes, have their instructional materials on day one, enroll in the courses that they needed, and stay in those classes because they could afford to stay and they had the materials, and they knew that they would be more successful if they had the materials. And so we've done that work. We've had the large events across the district. I think we had 4 of them. We spent an entire semester doing that work. We had Iris Creative, a third-party consulting firm, come in and help us with that work. That was a year before we opened Alamo Books. So we've done some good work, best practice work, to get the input of a broad range of folks across the district. And during the procurement process, we had faculty representatives from all 5 colleges on that committee to decide what company would be the best, as we saw, to meet our needs in this endeavor. And the committee recommended Barnes & Noble. And so we've done a lot of good groundwork, and it's all because of the work of many, many people across the district.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. And certainly you couldn't have expressed it better that we're giving the students what they need, and they've been lacking, and they deserve to have every resource available to them. I think this has been one of the best Alamo Together Summits that I've had the opportunity and pleasure of moderating. The questions that have come in have been so wonderful to provide us information to be able to further this program, to meet the needs that you have as faculty in the classroom and for our students. So I want to thank every person who committed to coming here today and to contributing to the conversation. Certainly we'll take all of those questions and provide you some feedback and answers and use them in our communiques going forward to our students. This presentation that we had today will also be available to you. It'll be sent to you by tomorrow or by Monday in your inbox, so look for that. Reminder to also look for information on Alamo Books Plus. That'll be a handy guide as you talk to your colleagues and students about the program. Again, thank you to Dr. Raley, to Ruth Zalrumpel, to Dr. Boyer, and certainly to our chancellor who has such a vision to bring this to our organization, to Dr. Mike Flores. Any closing thoughts, Dr. Flores, as we say goodbye?
I think just thanks. Thanks to each of you on the today on the panel. Thanks to our participants and thanks to our colleagues. Ruth mentioned, right, it came from a series of conversations, but one of the catalyzing moments was a big idea to provide universal access and ensure that each and every one of our students would have the instructional materials on day one. So just want to thank each of you for your work over the last 2 years. And it's not only a big idea, it's a big deal to be able to address this for our students. So I want to thank you all. Have a fantastic weekend. And thank you, Christy, for moderating.